Human beings have been through a lot. It can take a toll. Some approaches for supporting people who may be affected by trauma are better than others. Trauma-informed ministry is a simple model that uses what is better. And you are already good at a lot of it. Communities of faith have always included people who are facing or recovering from traumatic experiences. The Canadian Psychological Association quotes a 2008 study which showed that 76% of Canadians had had at least one traumatic experience, and some of them obviously had more than one. And 10% of Canadians also meet the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. Now that means that in your community of faith or your ministry organization, if you have 100 people in it, 76 of them have already known a traumatic experience in their lives, some more than one. And you have 10 people who already meet the criteria for PTSD. But wait, there's even more. Sometimes in our ministry outreach and service opportunities, we connect with an identifiable group in society which has an even higher percentage of traumatic experiences and PTSD. But wait, there's even more. All of these numbers predate the pandemic. Because yes, once the pandemic landed in early 2020, our lives changed significantly, and sometimes they changed traumatically. So I wrote a primer in Trauma-Informed Ministry based on 6 principles that we know are effective in responding to people who may be traumatized. But I ground all of the 6 principles in the things of faith. In part 1 of my primer, we talk about how trauma affects us, and I introduce tools that I present as spiritual practices that you can use with yourself or others to mitigate, manage, sometimes even eliminate some of the symptoms we might be having. Part 2 helps us to begin developing a theology of trauma, and I share with you one of the leading voices in that field, because we know that good theology informs ministry and always releases more gospel into the world. Then in part 3, we talk about the 6 principles themselves, what they mean and how they work in the different areas of ministry that we do every day. But the unique part of my model for trauma-informed ministry is that I say those principles are not just something that you give to other people. We need to learn to give them to ourselves. And that's because as we do ministry, we are opening ourselves to secondary trauma or triggering some of our own trauma history. So we need to be careful with it. And at the end of every part, there's a getting started section, so you can begin to work with some of this material right away in an area of ministry that matters in our lives. Now, I do affirm that we need to refer people to mental health professionals when their need exceeds our expertise. But I also honor and affirm our call to pastoral ministry because we often are the ones who are called first into a traumatic situation, and sometimes we're the last people to leave. I've been in ministry for about 40 years, and 33 of those years are in ordained ministry. But in the last decade, I have trained and studied specifically about trauma and how to respond effectively. So I'm a certified community and workplace traumatologist. That's sometimes called a field traumatologist. And I'm a compassion fatigue specialist in the therapist track and a critical incident responder. The thing is, most of us in ministry did not learn about trauma in our training. We learned to refer people to mental health practitioners. But even when that's a real option for people, we are still usually in the community of faith or the organization with those people. We may still be their pastor or a key ministry leader in a relationship with them. So we need to know how to create a trauma-informed relationship that will be supported and safe as we all go forward. People who are working in education, healthcare, emergency response, law enforcement, service agencies, and nonprofits, they're already using trauma-informed models in their work. I've been using one for several years now, and it's making a difference. So as we're moving forward into a changing ministry, it may be time for us to all consider whether it's time for a trauma-informed model in our lives. In this resource, you will find 6 principles to follow, trauma basics to know, a deepening theology to explore, all celebrating a gospel that never runs out. Written by someone who knows ministry, trauma, and the gospel firsthand.